It's time for another mock draft review where we will be going over a Dynasty one quarterback, third round reversal mock draft. And so before we get started, make sure and hit that like button, hit the subscribe and the notification bell. Make sure and drop a comment on what kind of mock draft you want to see us do on Mock Draft Mondays going forward. I'm Jaywo, and let's start reviewing. At the one spot, we have Jordan's team, and my favorite pick of Jordan's was Jaylen Waddle at the 212. I really like that pick just because there's a lot of guys in that tier who went around that same, but I feel like Jaylen Waddle was the end of that tier, and so I really like that pick. He's got all the upside in the world. He's a young guy going into his second year. And then on the opposite side, my least favorite pick was Lamar Jackson at the 601. Give me TJ Hawkinson, Darren Waller, and Michael Pittman, among many others. I just think it's too early to take a quarterback here, especially with all the value you see in quarterback later on in this draft. And this will be a consistent theme throughout this mock draft review. And then some added notes is I don't mind going wide receiver early, but when you use your first 5 picks on wide receiver and then take a quarterback in the 6th, feels like you're setting your team up for failure at the running back position. And I just don't think going so running back light and then taking 2 players from the same team is a good idea when drafting. My 2022 rank for Jordan's team is 10th overall. And then in the second slot, we have Swamp Nola. And my favorite pick of his was Kareem Hunt at the 7-11. I am continuing to pound the drum for Kareem Hunt and how underrated he is. And I just love that value. I mean, after him, there aren't really any guys who have the upside that he does just for years going forward. And so I really love that pick. And then my least favorite pick is, no surprise, Josh Allen at the 311. Feels like a reach to stack in the 1 QB league, and I'm just so big on waiting on quarterback in these leagues. And I mean, the fact that Mahomes went a whole 12 picks later tells me enough about the quarterback value in this league. The fact that Kyler Murray, someone who is in a tier right under him, went 4 rounds later, and Dak Prescott, who went 6 rounds later. So for me, it's just way too early. You can't spend a 3rd round pick on a quarterback in this league, no matter how talented that quarterback is. And some added notes is I like what I see, and there isn't much for me to hate or to love, but I personally would have gone Travis Etienne over David Montgomery purely for the upside, and this team will need to target wide receivers in trades this offseason. But heading into 2022, the rank I have them finishing at is 6th place overall. We have Super Team at the 3 spot. My favorite pick of theirs was Trey Lance at the 1003. Kind of going off what I've said previously, I just love the upside that Lance has with his rushing ability. He's a young guy. He's going to be the starter next year in San Francisco, and I just think that he has that top 3, honestly, upside as a quarterback. And to get him in the 10th round is quite the steal, and I just really love that value there. And then my least favorite pick is Kenneth Walker at the 603. I prefer the next 7 or 8 running backs drafted over him, and I know I said it in my last mock draft review, but I feel like some of these points I'm going to continue to bring up, but I'm not sure he's a 3-down running back in the NFL, and so taking him in the 6th round just seems too early for me. And some added notes where it just felt like taking too many risks in rookie running backs pre-draft, just not knowing the landing spots, not knowing their draft capital. I just feel like it's just a little too risky for me, and one of my favorite wide receiver cores in the league. And on top of that, just a high ceiling at that quarterback room. Their 2022 rank for me would be 8th place overall. And then in the 4th slot, we have Team 4. The person who drafted for this team left the draft after, but this was not an auto-drafted team. But my favorite pick of theirs was Dak Prescott at the 909, kind of similar to Trey Lance. I feel like Dak Prescott is in a very similar tier as Lance and Murray and maybe even Lamar and Joe Burrow. I feel like they're all kind of in a similar range. And I know that Dak's value has been dropping a lot recently, but I still love that value. I couldn't believe how long he lasted. And my least favorite pick of theirs was DJ Chark at the 1109. I just don't think that DJ Chark should be drafted in 12-round mock drafts. I know I was talking to Josh about one of the startup drafts that he's in, and he just drafted DJ Chark, but he got him in the 14th round. And so I feel like that's probably a more reasonable price point for him. And I'm just honestly a known DJ Chark hater, though, so take whatever I say about DJ Chark with a grain of salt. I just think he's been overhyped in the past, and I think that people still are maybe a little bit too high on him. Some added notes is going Pitts with the 4th pick is ballsy. But all things considered, I think they drafted a solid team with some upside players. For 2022, I have this team ranked as the 9th overall team. And then heading over to the guest, Eagle Dan in the 5th pick. I have my favorite pick of his as Calvin Ridley in the 405. I am a big fan of Calvin Ridley. I was really hoping he fell to me at the 406. He did not. I got sniped. But, man, Calvin Ridley has shown the upside he possesses. And if there wasn't any concern with him coming back to football, honestly, I think he would be in the 2nd round, maybe early 3rd. But Calvin Ridley is a dog. My least favorite pick of his was James Robinson at the 708. I think that's way too early for a guy who just got a major injury, going to be in a committee at best for a bad team. Man, I value Elijah Mitchell and Kareem Hunt so much more here. And I think, honestly, this team would have been dang near drafted perfect if one of those two was drafted over James Robinson. But going 4 wide receivers to start the draft, I have not sure I've ever drafted that way, but I really love how Dan ended this draft. Russ is crazy undervalued and a steal in the 11th round. For those reasons, I have his 22 rank as 1st overall. I think his team would be the favorite to take home the championship. And then in the 6th spot, we have my team. My favorite pick was J.K. Dobbins at the 307. There was some good value at running back that went a little later on, but I think J.K. Dobbins in the 3rd round, I feel like it was kind of an end of a tier in the beginning of a next tier. And my least favorite pick was George Kittle at the 406, just a round later. I mean, you guys like Darren Waller, TJ Hawkinson, and Dallas Goedert, who went 2 or 3 rounds later. I would have been much better off taking DeAndre Hopkins or Keenan Allen with my team's construction, but it's definitely one of those things where the grass is always greener on the other side. And I don't hate how I drafted. I think I soaked up a lot of wide receiver value, and so those are some of my added notes. And I think just for someone who waited so long for those wide receivers, some of those productive wide receivers who are older in age or have some question marks really fell to me. And the risk in taking Watson could pay huge dividends in value if he does play in the league again. I continue to find myself, I feel like, in a very similar range, but I have my 22 rank as 2nd overall. I think I have a very strong contending team. After my Michael Thomas pick, I was very nervous that I wasn't going to be able to build a team that was actually good. And then in the 7th spot, we have Ooga Booga. And my favorite pick of theirs was Rashad Bateman at the 906. I know there are some rumors surrounding Hollywood Brown and whatnot. I think they're not true from what I've been hearing, but I still love the value whether Hollywood is there or not. Bateman is still a guy who's very talented with a lot of upside. To get him in the 9th round after a guy like Gabe Davis or Rondale Moore or even Julio Jones, I just think that's really good value there, especially, again, a high upside pick. My least favorite pick here was Jameson Williams at the 607. I don't think he'll be valued as highly in the NFL as he will in fantasy football, in the fantasy football community. And for that reason, I just think that he's drafted around too early. Even if you're reaching on him, if he's your guy, I'm all about getting your guy. But even then, I still think that's at least around too early, if not 2 or 3 rounds. Some added notes, I believe that 3 quarterbacks should never be drafted in the first 12 rounds in a 1-quarterback league, no matter the value it may look like. Because of these reasons, I have the 22 rank as 11th overall in the league. And then in the 8th spot, we have my man JR. And my favorite pick of his was Mark Andrews at the 305. I had Mark Andrews queued up, and I would have taken him over J.K. Dobbins at the 307, but JR sniped me. I really love the pick. The Dynasty tight end 2 in most people's rankings. And yes, I know some of that tight end value dropped, but I still really, really don't mind taking Andrews here, considering I took Kittle a whole round later. My least favorite pick was Amon-Ra St. Brown. I would prefer Tyler Lockett in that 6th round. And the Lions are bound to draft a wide receiver and or bring one in through free agency. I mean, they are one of the worst, if not the worst, wide receiver core in the league last season. And so I 100% expect that, which will bring in some target competition for Amon-Ra. And so on top of that, Hawkinson will come back from injury. Swift will be healthy from injury, and they are also huge target hogs. And some added notes. It's a good draft with some great upside wide receivers in the later rounds, but I would hate to have Zach Wilson as my QB1. I am very much known, I probably will talk about it a lot this offseason, but I don't think Zach Wilson is good. I think he's a bust. There's a lot of stats that show that his upside is fairly limited. He would need to become one of the top rushing quarterbacks in the league to have any real value. This team, again, I do like it, and because of that reason, the 22 rank is 7th overall. In the 9th slot, we have G-Men J, and my favorite pick of his was DeAndre Swift at the 109. I really hesitated at the 6th overall pick taking DeAndre Swift. I ended up going with Najee Harris. I keep flip-flopping them in my rankings, but to get him 3 whole picks later, I just love that value so much. I am a known Swift lover, have been since last year. And my least favorite pick of his was Allen Robinson at the 704, strictly because Michael Thomas has similar concerns and has produced much better seasons, and they're a similar age. And so I just think Michael Thomas here would be the better upside pick if you're taking a shot on an older wide receiver. Some added notes, I really love the balance of this team, but I would want more security at running back. That's really where this team lacks, and because of that, I have his 2022 rank as 5th overall. And then we have Jay Few, and my favorite pick of his was Tyler Boyd at the 10-10. And the reason I love Tyler Boyd so much is if anything ever happens to Jamar Chase or T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, I think, will become a huge factor in that passing offense for the Bengals. And even without either of them, going down with any significant injuries or whatnot, Tyler Boyd is still a fairly valuable guy who you can plug in your flex if you need and can have one big play that can get you the points that you need to be a really good flex player. My least favorite pick was Clyde Edwards-Helaire at the 6'10". It's clear the Chiefs are out on him, and I'd rather have the next 5 of 6 running backs drafted after him. The only one who I would be hesitant on is James Robinson. Again, I think he was drafted too early, and we talked about that a little bit earlier. Some added notes, it's a great win now team with upside to win the league, but the lack of youth is terrifying for dynasty purposes. But talking about just next year, I have this team ranked as the 4th overall team. In the 11th spot, we have Tyreek Greyjoy. My favorite pick of theirs was Devontae Adams at the 111. I think personally, I know there's some question marks around him, but I think I would prefer Devontae Adams over Tyreek Hill and Cooper Kupp. And so kind of similar to DeAndre Swift, to get him so much later than those players, I really love that value. And my least favorite pick is Myles Gaskin at the 1102. I'd rather have Ronald Jones, Darrell Henderson, Alexander Madison. And some added notes is this team was fully auto-drafted. I don't hate it. I think there is some value to be had in this team, but I just don't see it being much of a contender at all. And because of that, the 2022 ranking is 12th place. And then in the 12th slot, we have Dr. Disrespect, who also basically auto-drafted the whole team. I know that they drafted the first 2 picks themselves and then auto-drafted the rest. And my favorite pick of theirs was Juju at the 8-12. And I just think that Juju is very underrated. And I think he very easily can be in the wide receiver 2 category for the next multiple seasons to come. And I know his future is up in the air and where he will land. But to get Juju in nearly the 9th round around guys like Julio Jones and Rondale Moore, and we've seen it before. We've seen what he can do. I know that there's a lot of doubt and that he hasn't shown a lot of upside since Antonio Brown has left, but I still believe that Juju can be someone who can see a pretty high volume in an offense. My least favorite pick was Burrow at the 501. I know this is going to be probably a hot take, but it's just too early for me to draft a quarterback with almost no rushing upside. I know he's in the same tier as some guys who are going, at least in my same tier of guys who are going much later, and I understand the hype that surrounded him because of the playoff run and whatnot, but his stats weren't crazy during that playoff run. They were pretty similar to what they've been all season. And then some added notes is, since this team was auto-drafted, I think it's a great team for a mainly auto-drafted team, and it really shows that the third-round reversal evens the playing field. This might surprise a lot of people, but my 2022 ranking for this team is actually third place overall. Again, I think there was a ton of value soaked up. Really don't like the Julio Jones pick, but I think if Dr. Disrespect would have been in the draft, he probably would have pivoted a different direction. That's a wrap for this mock draft review. And before you head out, make sure to hit that like, subscribe, notification bell. Also go in those comments. Let us know who your favorite team is and why. And just so you know, we are doing a mock draft Monday every single week, basically, this offseason. Make sure you get in our Discord channel. It's linked below. And that we'll post every single time, and you can get into those drafts. And either this side or this side, one of these two sides, will have the mock draft that we reviewed on top of just a playlist of all the mock draft videos. Thank you again. See ya.